state of Virginia is actually under tension. A gunman has allegedly killed 7 people in a Walmart store in Chesapeake. Police believe the shooter was an employee or former employee of the store who opened fire on the employees in a break room, killing himself too through self-inflicted injuries. We have more in this report.
Chesapeake Police Public Information Officer Leo Kuczynski has told journalists that police officers responded to a distress call from a store less than an hour before closing at around 10:12 p.m. Upon arrival, some victims were seen and evidence of shooting very clear. A spokesperson for Centara Healthcare told reporters that 5 patients were being treated at Centara General Hospital in nearby Norfolk, Virginia, as updates on their conditions was not immediately available. Investigators believe the shooter was an employee or former employee of the store who opened fire on other employees in the break room. 7 people were killed, including a shooter, and others injured as several officers and investigators were carefully sweeping the store and securing the area.
Tuesday evening, we responded here to the Walmart on, Sam's Drive for a report of a shooting. Once the initial officers first got here, they quickly realized that it was an active threat type situation, so we kind of switched our tactics to an active threat response and kind of went that motion. Several other officers, many other officers also responded. Parts of our members of our fire department responded. We did basically like a tactical entrance and movement in the building.
Chesapeake City officials have asked people to stay away from the store during the investigation. Jetta Jeffrey told reporters that her mother sent her text from inside the store during the shooting, alerting her that someone had opened fire.
About 10:18 saying that he had been shot. At the time, that's all that we knew, that he had been shot. We didn't know how, and what was really strange to us is that he clocks in at 10, so he hadn't even been there 10 minutes.
Virginia State Senator Louise Lucas said she was absolutely heartbroken about shooting in her district, adding that she, quote, will not rest until they find a solution to end this gun violence epidemic in the United States.
Let's talk to the president of the movement Pro Picture, joining me from Texas in the United States, Ibidolakwa Ajayi. Thank you so much for joining us on the news this hour. Let's get your reaction to this latest shooting, because there have been shootings in the United States and this has called for a lot of concerns. How do you react to this?
I react with a lot of shock. Thank you for having me on the show. It's sad to wake up to news this morning that there's been another shooting somewhere in the United States. I mean, this brings to, if we look at the numbers, it's been over 600 mass shootings in the United States so far this year. That's one more mass shooting too many already. And it's just really sad that a day to Thanksgiving, which is tomorrow in the United States, one of the biggest holidays that we have here, that everybody gets together to celebrate family, thank God, and everything it's just a day of celebration. Now this issue will be what will be dominating the news. So it's a real shock to hear that we've had another mass shooting in the United States.
Well, a lot of senators and also people who are actually the place of authority have been reacting to this latest shooting. For instance, the Virginia State Senator Louise Lucas wrote on Twitter that I would not rest until we find solutions to end this gun violence epidemic in our country. And that's been a debate that's been going on for years in the United States. On which angle or which position do you stand? Is this something that you feel that those in authority are actually filibustering about?
This is a very touchy subject here in the United States because the Constitution allows for people to bear arms, and it's a constitutional right. So the fight has always been between those who want to make sure that those rights are not taken away, and the other side that wants to ensure that even though the rights are not taken away, there are measures taken to prevent people that should not have these deadly weapons to have access to them. And it's been something that several successive governments have made attempts to curb, and depends on which side of the fence that you lie. The Republicans typically want gun people to have the rights to arms, and they try to kind of protect that right because they pander to the gun lobby, the NRA, whilst the Democrats typically want to see that there's some measures taken to control that. Now, the challenge that's there is with this new Congress now being dominated and taken over by the Republicans, there's going to be a lot of pushback in the House of Representatives by the Republican Party to see any measure that will take people's rights away from owning guns. They're going to push back against President Biden on that. For me, I feel it's long overdue. There needs to be stringent measures put in place. I know they've done a lot of things around trying to make sure there are background checks put in place that people do not have access to these deadly weapons. But then I think there also has to be some extra measures trying to evaluate, kind of look at people's mental state, to identify people that could potentially have issues mentally that should not have access to guns. So it's a tough one because on one side you have constitutional rights, and the other hand you're trying to protect the citizens, and it's a tough one. But the government really needs to act because this is something that will keep happening unless a definitive action is taken by the Biden administration to try and reduce, if not totally eliminate, gun violence in the United States.
We'll talk about individual perspective to this and what people are actually saying, around the world as regards what's going on in the United States. But then, whenever we have this issue of gun violence happening, all this criminality happening, in the United States, where you think that, the security agencies should be on top of their games and the people should be rational enough to ensure that this doesn't happen. How would you describe their swift response to this? Is it swift enough?
It's tough because when you look at this particular situation, these are supposedly employees in a Walmart break room, and if you're familiar with Walmart over here, they're massive stores. They even sell guns in Walmart. So this is an employee, or probably former employee, that was sitting probably with these victims, and they probably wouldn't have thought anything of it, and obviously he was armed, and it will have taken them by shock because in that situation, it's hard to know the intent of people because sometimes people walk into these stores and you don't know whether they're packing a gun or not, So the response here is typically swift because, the emergency system here works very well. So I wouldn't think there was an issue with having a swift response. I believe it was swift enough.
Yeah.
But because these things just sometimes happen unaware and catches people unawares, it's hard to determine, who is coming into a store with a gun unless they now start putting metal detectors at the entrance and people are being checked when they go into these grocery stores. But again, we're in the festive season and there's going to be a lot of people coming through those stores. And it's a really tough one because now we've had shootings happen in churches, we have shootings happen in schools, now at grocery stores. It just doesn't end at nightclubs,
right.
So where are how many places are you going to have the police go stand by the door and check people or pat people down? It's just a crazy situation right
Absolutely.
now.
That's the thing, because you'll be afraid to go to public places, even in your own house, or just say you want to take a stroll on the street. Someone can just walk over, walk close to you, draw a gun, and then the next thing you hear is bang, which it can be very, very traumatic for families of the victims who have experienced this. But then when this happens, they might be angry, and some of them might grow up and say, I want to retaliate, and then you tend to have the ripple effect. So whenever this happens, who bears the brunt? Well, the family bears the brunt, but then who pays reparation? How does the government compensate for the loss that some of these families are actually meant to, to go through?
Because this situation happened in a company, in an organization, a company like Walmart, which is massive here in the United States. Typically, there'll probably be the Walmart organization will probably be looking to take care of the families of the victims, and potentially there might also be something coming from the government. I'm not so sure if there's a scheme because this is not, it didn't happen on a government property or anything like that. So you'll be looking at Walmart basically taking the brunt of this when it comes to compensation, because these are victims that also work for the company. So that's something that the organization will probably have to resolve.
Right. In 2019, for instance, a mass shooting happened at the same Walmart in the city of El Paso in Texas, which I know that's a Walmart in Texas, leaving 23 people dead. And what would you say the kind of eyes the world will be looking at US? For instance, we had a conversation in the newsroom this morning, and I've got some colleagues who are saying I would never step my feet on the United States soil because I just don't want to be killed like a chicken. So what kind of reputation is this giving your country?
It's a tough one. I mean, the US is, for the most part, a peaceful country. Of course, each country has issues that they have to deal with. I think, if anything, the gun violence is what people worry about when they talk about the United States, outside of natural disasters, like weather issues. But typically, it's a very, very, very peaceful country. But it's such that you just do your best and trust God and ask, and do the best you can to protect yourself, because you never really know where these things happen, because it happens everywhere. You mentioned the one that happened in El Paso in 2019. The young man actually traveled several hours from Dallas to go carry out that attack. Now, how do you prevent something like that? So the issue is the government has to figure out how to limit access to dangerous weapons, assault weapons, to people that shouldn't have them. So that's what really needs to be addressed, So they got to find a way to make sure that these guns are not getting into the hands of the wrong people, and that should reduce the occurrence to a great extent. But, it's hard to argue with people that have this impression of the United States as a violent country when you have countries like Canada next door where you hardly hear of occurrences like this. So I really can't blame them, but for the most part, it's a big country, over 300 million people,
Absolutely.
but when these things happen, it does magnify it, so I totally understand that sentiment, but for the most part, the United States, it's a pretty decent and pretty peaceful country to live in.
Well, we'll definitely continue to look at how the situation, continue to pan out and how the government handles these, unforeseen issues that happen in the United States. The president of the movement Pro Pictures, Ibidapo Ajayi, thank you so much for your keenness of insight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.